Welcome to Little Sparks Big Impact podcast. I am Mica Mitchell. I'm a pediatric physical therapist. And with us, we have Joe Schreiber. I will have him introduce himself, but he and I are the host of this podcast. So, Joe, tell them a little bit about who you are and why are we here?
Yeah, thanks, Mika. So my name's Joe Schreiber. I'm also a pediatric physical therapist. I've been in practice in one way or another for 38 years now, which is a really long time. It's amazing to say that out loud sometimes, but here we are. I've been in a variety of pediatric situations, both clinically or clinical settings, both at the school-based, hospital-based, early intervention-based, and then also spent a good chunk of my career in an academic setting teaching, and primarily teaching pediatric physical therapy. So really have had a lot of experience, and I am really interested in what we can do as a profession, collectively and individually, to help our children and families, the individuals that we work with, we provide services for, to live their best lives. And I think there's a lot of really interesting things to think about and talk about related to that. And so it seemed like a good idea to find somebody really smart to talk about that stuff with. And so I reached out to Mika a little while back, and we decided that we would give this a try and have some of these conversations, talk about this stuff, and maybe the small spark of a conversation between us ignite some thoughts and ideas, and potentially it's a little ambitious, but maybe some big impacts that we can have again with our children and families. So really I'm looking forward to these conversations and this opportunity and talking with Mika. So
How exciting. And yes, so I have been in pediatric physical therapist for 21 years, which also sounds so weird when you say it out loud or you actually have to calculate that number like, oh, wow, it's been a minute. So I've seen some things and I've experienced different environments, clinical environments, working with kids in probably most clinical settings, from the NICU to acute care, outpatient, home based, rehabilitation. And I took that passion of peds to academia. So you and I share that in common. And just really trying to share knowledge with the next generation, I think is so important because some of the lessons that I've learned, maybe other people don't have to learn it the way I did with the amount of labor, but just to be a resource, and then advance the conversation, right? So if I could tell you lessons learned, you can save time on that, and then have this ability to move further and consider more with the patients and the families and the community that we serve. And so, um, my goal for this podcast is that we really can have conversations. That will stimulate, that will make you think, you know what, maybe I could think about it a different way. Or did I even consider that when I was working with that family? And I love the name Little Spark, Big Impact because it doesn't take a lot. It's just one change. Listen to a conversation, think about it, see if it works for you. If it does, try it, try some version of it. And if not, let's join us for the next conversation and see if there's something else that we talk about that, a paradigm shift or just really expanding on the research that's out there. Because I think a lot of times we get so focused on our practice and the day to day that maybe we lose sight of what else is going on in the world of research or in clinical practice, or what are people trying, what products are out there that we should consider. And it doesn't have to be just things that were made specifically for PT. And then I think the bigger conversation is from an interdisciplinary standpoint, that we can't lose sight of our other colleagues that are working with the children and families that we're treating. So I think really bringing a holistic approach and thought to what we're doing as pediatric physical therapists to have some impact. And so I am excited for the conversations, the topics that we'll be discussing, and just building this little spark, big impact community where we can learn what have you guys been up to and what else do we need to consider as we expand our ideas and our thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's great. The comments you made about the learning and sort of pushing things forward, I think is really interesting because that's if you think about what teaching is, right? It's sort of sharing your knowledge, of course, but then also some ideas about where to start, or maybe some roads that we went down that weren't as productive or as effective as they potentially could have been. So encouraging people to, if not avoid those roads, maybe not quite go down as far as we did, that sort of thing, so that there's a little bit better foundation to move the profession forward. And that phrase too, moving the profession forward, ultimately it all always circles back to that kid sitting across from us and their parents sitting in the room as well, most likely. In some settings, not as much, but most likely, or nearby, that we have to communicate with and collaborate with. And how can we do the best job we can in those moments to help families have happy, successful, productive lives in the short term and in the long term. It's why we all got into this profession, and it's why we do the work that we do. And by having these types of conversations and getting the brain cells firing a little bit, I think that helps with that learning and that foundation, and moving the conversation forward, just like you said, Mica. So again, really looking forward to where this goes, and whether or not we have a huge impact. Feel like I'm already a little bit energized and looking forward to it. So that's great.
Yes, lessons learned. I love that because I feel like even in just our collaboration, when I met you, I was like, Joe Schreiber is a wealth of knowledge. Like, this is an individual that could be, and ultimately in some roles is a mentor. And I'm like, this is, I think we're also modeling how we continue this dialogue. And there may be times where we don't agree or we like agree, or maybe just even our stories are just totally different. But I think in all of that, it's how do we move forward, right? We have to always consider other people's perspectives in this. And knowing that I don't know everything, don't ever claim to know everything, but how do we find out? And being okay with being wrong. And then what is the process of, doing different as it pertains to, like you said, this individuals that are in front of you that have a need, and we have lots of knowledge, even collectively as a profession, that we can just be able to share, educate, encourage, support, share resources and all those kinds of things that really will have some impact on the families that we work with. And I think that's what probably makes me most excited about this. Going to continuing education courses or looking at the research, or being a critical inquirer, and really diving into the implications of what is being recommended. Like, is this practical for the patients that I see? And maybe we have to, allow ourselves to be flexible in our approach and in our interventions, where sometimes we aren't, because we're like, well, the research says this and we got to do it this way. And but you have this person in front of you that's like, yeah, that sounds good, but no. So where do you meet in the middle? And so I just look forward to the discussions, the conversations, and exploring like what else is out there, because there's so much. Um, and I think collectively we can absolutely explore that.
Yeah, I think the sort of idea of the podcast is something that is a little bit new to me, but seems like a really interesting way to share information and to have a little bit of an impact. I know we all have our favorite podcasts, and things that we like to listen to and hear from. And the sort of combination of the information and the entertaining conversation, I think, is a nice meshing of things that can have those sparks and impacts, and encouraging ongoing learning and implementation, application, translation, whatever the buzzword is or the phrase that you like, but to get the information out there and considered in clinical practice is hopefully an outcome that this format will encourage and support.
I love that, whatever the buzzword is, because it is like things come around in cycles, and if you've been in it long enough, you're like, oh, I've seen that in a different version before, and then just that willingness to consider and not just be like, oh, my way has been working for me for forever, and I'm good. But really, really, just kind of coming into this podcast, like for every episode, just come with an open mind. We like growth mindsets. Come with an open mind and see what you've learned or what you can share. Or if it's something that you're like, I already knew that. Well, did you share that with somebody else? How have you helped someone else implement it if that's the case? All right. So we look forward to joining. We look forward to you joining us again in our future episodes and letting us know what topics you might be interested in or what you're seeing in the clinic, what you're seeing out in the areas where you are, because sometimes our perspective is based on our geographic location or our clinical setting. And the more perspectives that we can hear from, it will absolutely enrich the conversation and help other people really start to open up their capacity for understanding like, wait, it's so much more than I even thought it could be. So we thank you for checking us out, and we look forward to continued interactions with this little spark big impact community. We want to hear what you guys are trying and what you're up to and what you want to learn more about.